So today's Palm Sunday, and we're talking about Jesus' triumphant entry. And so when I think about that, I think about big moments in my life. And so I go back to high school, and whenever there was a prom or a homecoming dance, a lot of my friends and I would, scrounge our money together. We would try to go rent a really nice, stretch limousine or a really fancy car that we had no business driving at the age of 16. And then I think about big moments like my wedding day and how I borrowed a BMW convertible to drive off after the reception was over. And I think about, why would we go through such great lengths to have these nice cars, to make such a big statement in moments like that. And so it's because, moments like that at the time, they're big moments. And so when there's big moments like that, a lot of times we think that it requires a big entrance. And so then I think about Jesus and the way that he had his, what they call a triumphant entry. And so the Messiah was here, the Savior of the world. He's here to save all humanity. And he comes riding in on none other than a donkey. And so I think at the time, where we would expect a red carpet that would be rolled out, instead it was old garments and olive branches laid on the road before them. And the Jewish people at that time, they probably had really high expectations that they have long awaited for their Messiah to come. And they thought that he was going to come in like a war hero and just dominate his enemies and just end it all right then and there. But the point is, it was way different than they expected. And so even as Jesus came and made his triumphant entry on a donkey, it's because he never wanted to make it about himself. It was always about his people. And so I think about that, and I think about what Jesus was thinking in that moment. As he's riding in, the crowd is loud, there's people all around him, and he must have been thinking on the way in, like he knew what he was about to face. He knew the pain and the torture that he would face at the crucifixion. And he knew that he was doing all this for his people. And he still decided to endure it all, because he knew that just around the corner was victory. And so I wonder in our lives where we sometimes face things, hardships, loss, pain, whatever it is that we walk through, affliction, there are a lot of times it's easy to think and wonder where God is in those moments. But if we endure just as Jesus endured, we know that victory is just right around the corner. And the amazing thing is about having a relationship with Christ is that we always fight from a posture of victory. So we're fighting knowing that the victory's already won. And so when we know that, we know what the end of our story is, just as Jesus knew the end of his stories, is that victory was just around the corner. And so for many of us, where it's easy to feel like we're walking in defeat, and we live in that, we live in defeat, we know that we have a Savior who has gone before us. He's fighting for us. He fights our battles. We know how this thing all ends. And so it's easier for us knowing that we already have the victory. And then, it makes me think about a verse at the end of John 12, verse 19. It's the Pharisees. And so the Pharisees had intentions of arresting Jesus, bringing him in and putting him to death eventually. And so there's a verse in verse 19 where the Pharisees are just standing around looking at each other. They're seeing the crowds around Jesus, and they just kind of look at each other and they go, there's nothing we can do. Everyone has already gone after him. And so it makes me think about how when how when the enemy looks at us and the things that we face and the things in our lives, just when he thinks he's got a grip on us, he says to himself, there's nothing we can do. Because he knows too that the victory's already won. And so the times where we face those things in our life, the battles that we face, it's good for us to hang on to the fact and the truth and the knowledge that we've already got the victory. We know how this thing ends. Jesus has won it already. He's already saved humanity. And so I love how the enemy probably asks those questions when he looks at us. So for us, what is it that we need victory over in our lives? It may look different. Maybe you have something really heavy that you're carrying right now. You've suffered loss, grief, whatever it is that you're walking through. We have victory, but just know this. Just as the Jewish people at that time didn't expect Jesus to come in on a donkey, the way that we're going to find victory in our lives may not be what we expect either. because Jesus has a way of doing things that's not going to meet our expectations, but it's all in His timing. But we can find hope and joy in those things and have high expectations that we do have victory in those things. We love you guys.